Hi, this is Kitty from bashfulcat.com, and I am going to try and do a little card tutorial for you today. For this card, I started with a nice big background stamp and a piece of just Neenah Solar White 80-pound cardstock. I'm using my powder tool to prep it so that I can do some heat embossing on this. I am going to ink up my stamp, and I'm leaving my stamp face up. I find this is the easiest way to get a really good impression and to make sure I got enough ink on it. I'm actually going to place my paper down onto the stamp instead of the other way around. And then I'll take a piece of scratch paper and put it on top just so I don't get my fingers all inky or anything. I'm going to rub really well and make sure I get every part of that card. It looks like it's shifting around here, but the cardstock isn't actually shifting on the stamp because I'm using two hands and I'm making sure I hold it in place with one. It's mostly just the camera that's bouncing around there. Sorry. So I lift it up and I have a nice impression there. You can't really see it, but it's there. I'm going to use some Hero Arts Fine Detail white embossing powder, and I'm going to emboss this in white. I'm going to speed up the camera here in a minute and through a few other parts in the video. I'm not the world's fastest card maker, and we'd be here all day if I didn't speed it up a little. But I'm going to cover the whole thing with powder, trying not to smudge it or get my fingers all over it. I'm using a coffee filter there just to capture the loose powder. So I've got that all covered, and now I can just pour the extra powder back into my container. And then I'm going to take it off camera here for a minute and heat set that. So it's now all done, and you can kind of see there that sparkly part. It's subtle, but we're going to do a little emboss resist here. I'm going to ink the background, and everywhere where it's embossed, the ink won't stick. So our design will pop out. I'm using 4 totally different inks here. You're probably not supposed to do this, and I'm certainly not the world's best ink blender, but I'm actually starting with the Simon Says Stamp Sea Glass ink, and then I'm going to move on to Hero Arts Shadow ink in Pool. From there, I'm going to go to a Tim Holtz Distress ink in Faded Jeans, and last but not least, a Stampin' Up ink in Night of Navy, I believe. So I went back, and this actually took a little while, and I actually did some more off camera, just trying to clean it up and add more ink and smooth it out and make it like I wanted it. But in the end, this is what I ended up with. That piece is all ready now. I'm going to take a stitched die cut or stitched rectangle die, and I cut it out there, made it nice, right size and shape for my card, and it's got the nice little stitching on the edge. Kind of hard to see here, but looks nice. Now I'm taking a Simon Says Stamp Big Hello die, and I'm going to actually cut the hello out of my design there. So I'm taking my die cutter, and I come back, and I have a nice little hello. I am going to use all of the pieces here on my card, so I'm very carefully going to remove everything. Normally, I would use the positive and negative separately and get 2 cards out of this, and I'll show you. You can see here, this would actually make 2 really nice cards, one with the positive and one with the negative. You can put those little pieces back in and get a nice clear hello. But for this card, I'm actually going to use everything. So I'm going to start by adhering that negative piece straight to my card base. I'm going to go around the edge with my handy dandy tape runner here, but then I'm also going to take some liquid glue and put it on around the edges of those letters. I found that some of those little pieces around the letters don't stay down real well, and it helps to have adhesive right up against the edges of those smaller parts, the little corners and such. So I've got some Ranger Multi-Medium here, and I have one of those precision tips. That really helps to get into the little spaces. So I'm going to run that around my little die cut area and then we'll adhere it to my card base. For this card I had something different in mind, but if I was just going to use the negative die, then I probably would have popped this up on some dimensional foam adhesive and given it some more lift there. But in this case, I need this to be flat on the card because I'm going to lift the positive die cut here. Anyway, I'm going to line that up. I actually ended up a tad bit crooked here just because, of course, I'm filming and nothing ever comes out straight when I actually have the camera going. But it's close enough and I'm not that picky, so I'm going to hold everything down, make sure I get it nice and straight. Well, as straight as I can. Put all those pieces down. So now you can see there why that glue on the little edges there was helpful. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to put in those little itty bitty pieces into the negative area there. And the best way to do this is to use the positive die to help you with placement. So this kind of goes together just like a puzzle. It's nice and neat and everything will fit together really well. I am not gluing that hello down, I'm just setting it there so that I can see where to put my negative pieces. And they just fit right in there. And I'm going to hold it down, make sure it gets good seal there. I could just leave the hello there and keep going, but I wanted to make sure each piece was securely adhered to the card base before I moved on. So now I'm going to go ahead and speed things up and put in all of my other little pieces until we have a complete word there. Once I have all those negative pieces in there, this actually makes a really nice card all by itself. And like I said, if you want to pop up the base with some foam, it looks really nice too. But I'm going to keep moving and use that positive die as well. So I went ahead and took some more of that same blue cardstock and I cut out a bunch more hellos. These are exactly the same paper as the card base. Looks a little different here for some reason, that's just the lighting. I'm now taking some Ranger multi-medium matte glue here with the little, I've got one of those precision tips on my bottle so I can get nice little itty bitty drops of glue. I'm going to put that all over my die and then I'm going to start layering all of those big hellos there. I think there were 6 blue hellos that I cut out. I'm going to layer all of them. This does take a while, I will admit it, so I'm going to speed up the camera here in a minute. Usually I use foam when I do something like this, but for this particular project I wanted the base to match my card base exactly, and the best way to do that was to use the same cardstock and layer it. So I'm going to layer that on. And this is actually really easy to do. You just line it up, and because I'm using liquid adhesive, I've got some play there and a little time before it's going to set, so I can arrange them and get them just perfect and stacked just right. So, like I said, a little time consuming, a little tedious, but I enjoy this kind of thing, and it's really not hard at all. So I'm going to go through and glue all of these all together, and when I'm done, I'm going to have a nice thick embellishment instead of the flimsy little single piece paper. So on to my third piece, and then I think I just skipped ahead because I realized this was taking a long time. And there we go. We now have a nice thick piece. Like I said, I think that's 6, but you can actually get quite a bit of dimension even from just maybe 3. So just depends on how much time and patience you have. Now I'm going to glue the actual printed piece on top, the one that came out of the design, and line that up. And what I end up with is a matching hello with a nice thick base there. I'm going to put it on my card, and originally my plan had been to set it right into the space, but I found that it was kind of hard to read. It was a little too subtle, so I offset it and just set it a little bit higher and to the right of the negative space there on my card. And what this did was create a little bit of a shadow for my word. That combined with the extra dimension from that blue cardstock, and it helps the word to kind of pop out of the base, but you still have the effect of that solid design over the whole card. So this worked out pretty well. Like I said, I made several versions of this card before I was happy with it. And I'll show you a couple of the first ones at the end of this video, but this one turned out pretty well. I would have liked to embellish it a little bit more, and it's possible I will before it actually goes in the mail. But I'm pretty happy with how the layered die cut offset word here thing worked. So I then went and cut out a bunch of flowers from that same blue cardstock. This is actually an old Sizzix Sizzlets die. I don't think it's available anymore, but I could have used any flower die or punch for this. And a punch would probably be faster. I'm using the exact same method I did, and I glued all of those together, and magically I already have them all done. I'm going to adhere the flower to the card. But first I decided it needed a little something, so I pulled out my Wink of Stella, and I'm going to put some glitter on it. My Wink of Stella is getting a little weak. I had to fight with it a little bit to get all the glitter out, but it worked and added some nice shine there. I'm also going to put it over the Hello die. I tried a few different things, and the Wink of Stella is probably the fastest and easiest, and it was easiest for this video, but I found that I got better results if I used some iridescent sparkle embossing powder on the Hello before I actually attached it to the card. But there are a lot of different ways that you could add some sparkle and shine. I've also thought about adding glossy accents on top of the whole thing, and I still may do that. I think that that extra bit of shine might help. There's an example at the end where I used some ultra thick embossing powder on one of them, and it did add some nice shine. I just didn't have the time to do that here. So there's my flower. It's all attached, and we now have a nice card, but it needed a little bit more, so I pulled out some of this baker's twine. This is actually Dollar Tree baker's twine. I got 3 of these little rolls for $1, and I'm happy with it. This stuff is just as nice as any of the other baker's twine I've used. So can't beat the price. There are lots of different ways to make a good bow, but most of the time I'm happy to just fiddle with it until I'm happy with it. So once I get it just right, I will trim off the ends. Honestly, this was pretty solid baker's twine, and I probably didn't need to do the next step, but I like to make sure that it's not going to just come apart and fray and end up all messy looking. So once I get these edges trimmed and the bow's the right size, I'm actually going to take a dab of that same multi-medium glue, and I'm going to put it on the ends of my twine there, and that will keep it from unraveling. I've also done this with Fray Check or Fray Stop, which is a product from my old cross-stitch days, and it works great too. But it's basically the same thing. It's just glue, so this was handy, and that's what I used. So I put some on the flower. I really like this glue because it always dries invisible. You can't tell it was there, and I usually end up with glue where I don't want it, so that's helpful. And it's also very powerful. Once it's dry, those things don't move. It really holds down just about everything. So there's my card. We're all done here. And now I'll just show you the finished product. That is the finished card that I just made. And I'll also show you a side view so you can see some of that dimension. It's really got a lot of dimension there because of all those layers. The next one is a pastel version I did, and I like this one, but I didn't offset the hello, and it kind of disappears. And then I made another one in red, and I like this one also, but I did the layers in white instead of red, and I felt that it was a little too subtle, which is why I went with blue on the blue card. So thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.